Hi there, it's Kareem from Keeper's Nursery. Today is the 6th of February 2025. It's the afternoon. I've just finished work and I wanted to make a video about apple breeding. More specifically about selecting parents for your crosses. So initially when I started my apple breeding project back in 2015, I basically chose 3 different parents and took the pips out of those. These are what we call openly pollinated seedlings. Well, basically those seeds, I don't know who the pollen parent is, but I know who the fruit parent is, as it were, the female parent. Now that I'm going to be entering the 5th phase of my apple breeding project, last season I did some hand pollinations, and this year I thought it would be quite nice to actually share more information about which parents I select. Now, when you do crosses, the classic cross that I've come across the most is Cox's Orange Pippin and Golden Delicious. Now, I believe the thinking behind that is everyone knows that Cox's Orange Pippin tastes very nice, and Golden Delicious has certain attributes that are commercially very sort of well, they're I'd like to think they're the sort of the birth of the modern type of apple. This is a Cox's Orange Pippin seedling. This is called Goldrush. It keeps very well. It has a sort of pleasant sort of shape to it, and it's also quite crispy. Now this apple here, which is called Nuvar Cheerful Gold, and these are all it's still very nice. I'm still eating all of these from storage. Nuvar Cheerful Gold is, believe it or not, just another Cox's Orange Pippin Golden Delicious. They've been doing this cross for a very long time. Some would say it's probably a bit dated and boring, perhaps. But you know, it seems a very route one, just to go for, let's go with the thing that everyone thinks tastes the best, with the thing that commercially has some success. And you know, they actually came up with some good stuff. The Nuvar people also came up with Nuvar Freckles, which is an early season apple. It doesn't quite look like this. Not as nice as Cheerful Gold in my opinion, but that's another one. L-Star is another one. There's Rubinette, which is a very nice Cox's Orange Pippin Golden Delicious. Freiburg is a fantastic one, and they're all very different actually. So do we just do Cox's Orange Pippin Golden Delicious, or do we take it a step further? Maybe instead of Golden Delicious, we substitute in Goldrush, which many would believe is actually a superior apple to Golden Delicious. And why not? I mean, the whole thing with apple breeding is there are so many genes in the gene pool of apples. It's so unpredictable already because of this sort of strong apples tend to strongly want to outbreed. They don't want to inbreed. So every apple is genetically very different from the sort of its siblings, and the characters which the characters which you see in the apples are very different as well, which is why it's actually quite tricky to breed a new apple. You don't just get this sort of equally balanced Cox's Orange Pippin Golden Delicious in the next generation. You get everything, which is very interesting. And apples, ancestrally, we can go back 1 or 2 generations with lots of them, which I'll talk about in a sec, but we can't really go back much further, and beyond that it's a mystery what was there, unless you're actually doing the genetics. But from my point of view, when I started the project in 2015, and it certainly wasn't a project at that stage, it was just a sort of a light-hearted experiment, I was curious to see how different they would all be, and also as they're openly pollinated, I just wanted to see what came out of it. The results were very good, I have to say. But I selected 3 parents. I chose Kids Orange Red, which is it's a Red Delicious, I believe. I think it's a Red Delicious crossed with a Cox's Orange Pippin. I chose Rajka. So Rajka is a Sampion crossed with a Katie. Now Sampion is a Golden Delicious crossed with a Lord Lambourne, and a Lord Lambourne is a Worcester Pearmain crossed with a James Grieve. Katie is also a Lord Lambourne crossed with a James Grieve. Now Worcester Pearmain is Devonshire Quarrendon, but James Grieve is Cox's Orange Pippin. So everything goes back to Cox's Orange Pippin, and people have been doing it over and over again, and why not stop? Because most of the nice flavors in apples actually come from having a Cox's Orange Pippin in the ancestry, as far as I'm aware, because there are lots of apples that don't taste anything like them. And it's funny that when you actually come across an apple that does taste, it has that depth of flavor like a Cox's Orange Pippin. You look back in it, sort of, you try and find, you can just Wikipedia it. You tend to find that it has got Cox's Orange Pippin in its ancestry. Now, many commercial breeders sort of keep what their crosses are secret, which is fair enough, because they're spending a lot of money, they're spending a lot of money trying to do this sort of research for themselves and trying to develop new seedlings. And obviously they have competitors that will also be trying to produce the new varieties, and the supermarkets only have 5 slots or something, and one slot in the sort of the fruit section may be up for grabs. They don't want their competitor to come along with their same version of the apple, and that's fair enough. And some breeders don't do that. Don't talk about which varieties that they're breeding with. There are some sort of breeders out there that more like grassroots breeders, hobby breeders, which do talk about them because they've got no financial gain. I'm somewhere in the middle because obviously I've trademarked a few of my varieties, and I'm selling them in my nursery. This doesn't really stop people from, hobbyists from basically trading scions, but it does stop other nurseries from actually basically pinching what I've created and profiting off it. But it's at the same time, I've been thinking recently, there's no point really keeping everything secret from people who just wanted to learn from me from YouTube. And to be honest, there aren't any other sort of nurseries breeding to the same extent, and I certainly don't sort of feel that they're going to really sort of take anything that is it's not that obvious, funnily enough. So when I did my breeding, I didn't know who the pollen parents were, which you may think, okay, well, that's a bit naive. I was more on the lines of, we have about 700 different varieties in the nursery out there. So think about 700 different varieties, all of the possible crosses that you can do between them. So, Granny Smith, you cross that with every single of all the other 699 varieties. Then you look at Golden Delicious, you cross it with the remaining 698 varieties. If you do that, the maths comes around 245,000 potential crosses. Now, no one in their lifetime is going to do all those crosses, and certainly I wasn't going to select things that were not very good to begin with to do the crosses. Imagine how much work that would be as well. So instead, I just thought, well, we're going to basically treat the first few years as trials. The first 3 phases of my apple breeding, one of which is all fruited pretty much. The other 2 are going to fruit in the next 2 years, or start to fruit in the next 2 years. That's more of a trial. That's basically anyone who's got anything to show, come along, have a go. If you imagine, I'm not ruling anything out at this stage. I am curious, which of my, let's say, Freiberg seedlings is going to taste the best? Which of the Rajka seedlings is going to taste the best? And let's say there are 100 of those seedlings. You taste them all, number 17, number 14, number 99, those 3 taste the best. I can then take leaf samples of that, send that away, and get that genetically tested to find out who the pollen parent was of each of those 3 superior apples, and get the results back. So what happened was, with the Rajka seedlings, I think it was 70, there was number 77, which was Bethan. I think Hamid's Red Pippin was number 72 or 73, and number 82, which is Primrose Pippin. Those 3, I sent them away. Hamid's Red Pippin is a lovely full-coloured red apple that came back with the pollen parent being Discovery, most likely to be Discovery. That was not a huge surprise. Discovery's a nice apple. It is a, it doesn't, the seasons don't quite match up with Discovery, but it's still a full red apple. So I thought, okay, that makes sense. The next one which came back, which was Bethan, seedling 77, the pollen parent was definitely the Canadian Sunrise variety, and that made a lot of sense because that was an early season variety and it was very crisp, and the shape was somehow similar. And I thought, hang on, that makes sense. That's almost a cross that I would have thought about doing myself at the time. The third one came back, and this was Primrose Pippin. And this took 2 years to come back because there was an issue with the genetic analysis. When it finally came back a few weeks ago, it was actually this one. It was Goldrush, which had pollinated the Rajka. And I mean, all three of those parents, those trees are not adjacent. They're about 200 meters apart from the Rajka tree. So the bees do travel. It's not just the next door neighbor which is pollinating. But that apple suddenly made sense, and I thought at that stage, I thought, okay, well, actually selecting your parents does make sense. Now, would I have necessarily chosen to cross Rajka with Goldrush? No, I don't think at the time I would have thought about it, but now that I look into it more, Goldrush has got good keeping qualities, it's got good disease resistance. Rajka equally has got good disease resistance, that's why I chose it. And the offspring is, superior to both. And you think, oh, okay, that means that maybe it's worth actually selecting both parents and having a go like that. Now, the trial period is still going on with all these other varieties that I've sort of got open pollinated seedlings of, and I dare say I've got how many have I got? 1,200 at least. No, can't be that much. Maybe it is, yeah, maybe it is about 1,200. I think about 1,200 of those seedlings still out there. And then the next batch, which last year I did some hand pollinating, I've got approximately 550 seedlings growing in the grow room right now. So those ones I've gone the next step and actually hand pollinated them. But yeah, I'm still learning as we go, and certainly some things will come up stronger than others. For example, I found Rajka seedlings were this was all based on numbers that I gave them, values. Rajka seedlings were actually, on average, higher quality fruits than Kids Orange Red seedlings, and those are higher quality fruits than Rubinola seedlings. Rubinola is a very nice variety, disease resistant. Many of the seedlings come out very acidic and big, and I just thought, well, these are not, these are almost the bad attributes of Rubinola. Maybe it's the pollen parent, but I did the same experiment with the Rajkas, and on average they, with not a huge sample set, let's say 40, there was very few particularly bad apples, but on average with the random pollen coming in, very good results. So I obviously will narrow down from 700 potential parents, and also now that we're including all the seedlings that I have, I don't even know. It'll be in the millions of possibilities. But we're selecting for things now like flavor, very very important. You do want to have good texture as well. It's almost a too big a flaw to overlook if the flavor is bad. Now, some people think that texture is more important than flavor. Some people think flavor is more important than texture. I think they're both very important, and we're going to be selective, so they're both important. Certainly, a mushy apple that tastes good is not going to go very far in terms of me selling this apple to customers, and most customers will expect an apple that is crisp to begin with it anyway. Flavor wise, people have such different expectations of a flavor of an apple that the idea is actually not to produce one perfect apple, it's to produce many very good apples and let people choose which one their favorite is. This is a mistake that obviously in the commercial world, then they're not going to push 10 apples into the supermarkets and say put them all on your shelves because we want everyone to have a choice. They want to just say this is the best apple in the world, this is the whatever cosmic crisp or whatever they've come out with in America, this will be the best apple ever, and there's no other apple. When they did those trials, there were probably hundreds of other apples that were very similar, which were better in other ways, but they decided on one apple. I don't know what their parents were, but those things anyway. There's lots of, I think producing lots of different apples will be the way forward. The other important thing to think about is season. Late season apple, Primrose Pippin is a late season apple. Bethan is an early season apple. We can go earlier, hopefully. Bethan is by far the best tasting early season apple. And when I say early season, I just mean early September, very late August. Maybe if I can get something that will taste even better in early August, that would be great. I don't think I'll be able to get as far as July. I will try my best, but that's hard. Going late season, I mean middle season, that's like Hamid's Red Pippin. Quite frankly, there's a lot of stuff in the mid-season. I'm not going to... I certainly would like more apples in mid-season, but even I know that there are almost too many apples in mid-season. So, you know, producing something superior in mid-season, it's just going to be another superior apple in mid-season. Late-season apple like Primrose Pippin, which I pick in sort of mid-late November time, suddenly you think, okay, well, there aren't as many varieties to pick at this time of the year. That's quite a good thing to have. Disease resistance, that's important. And then, you know, other stuff. You know, there might be something else out there, some curiosity that is worth doing, some sort of shape. I don't know. Those sorts of things are not my priorities at this time. So when you're selecting your parents, you know, other people have got targets, going back to all these let's say flavor and texture. If I mean, I'm sure everyone watching this is aware of Stephen Edholm's videos, his skill cult videos. He is extremely enthusiastic about red fleshed apples, and especially the red fleshed apples in California. Now these are varieties that I think basically don't really exist in England. I've not tried them. We've had Wixon Crab for a very long time. That is an extremely unusual apple. The Moorish flavor which it has is it's bizarre. It doesn't really taste like an apple. I suspect that lots of the varieties, having not tried them, are going to have unusual flavors, which some people will like and some people will dislike, but those are very interesting. And Stephen's very, very open about what he's breeding. You know, this ruby art variety with things like Goldrush, and then you come up with other red flesh varieties and you cross those back and forth, and that's very interesting. There is another apple breeder in England, Nigel Deacon, who's doing, I imagine, similar things. And there was very famously this red love. There's Red Love, which was bred. There's Sunburst, which was bred nearby. Let's say I do sort of. I'll do sort of 5% of my stuff with red flesh varieties, but it's not a priority for me. Other people are probably doing more with it, and certainly. I haven't got huge enthusiasm for it yet, I'd say, because of the red flesh varieties that we've got access to so far in England. They tend to just be very acidic, very strong acidic flavors now, and I'm more into the cock stuff. You know, I'm maybe a bit boring, but you know, traditionalist in that respect. I would. There aren't many apple breeders in the country. I know James as well from Istwith. I've spoken to him. He's doing more sort of straight line stuff like me, which is straightforward sort of things. Like I'm not entirely sure what he's breeding. He's had sort of relative success recently, I believe. I would like to go up to Wales to see him again, but it's quite far. So when I'm selecting my parents, let's say I want to have a late season apple. Something like Goldrush is quite a good variety for that. Something like Crips Pink as well. That would be a good parent. I could actually, maybe I'll go through some of the crosses that I've planned. But let's say if you go with Primrose Pippin, which was a Goldrush, which was a Rajka and a Goldrush, you can cross that again with something like Crips Pink to go later. Maybe you cross it with something like Non-Parade to add more flavor. Maybe you cross it with Egremont Russet or Herefordshire Russet to get more sort of a more russet flavour to it. That was quite a sweet apple already. There was Seedling 90 as well, which I believe will come back as a Rajka Goldrush because it's very, very similar to Seedling 82, which was Primrose Pippin. Again, that was an extremely acidic but sweet apple. That was the most sweet apple, but also the most acidic apple. It almost covered it. That would be an interesting apple to sort of cross with something mellow like a Crips Pink. This one, in case you're wondering, this is Gloucester 69. This is just another apple that's completely crisp, but that's quite interesting. I mean, it looks very much like Red Delicious. It wouldn't surprise me if it has got Red Delicious in it, but that would be another one. I mean, it's an interesting shape. Why not try and produce a Red Delicious that is more actually tastes of something? You know, this one, especially Gloucester 69. In terms of interesting flavors, you know, where Stephen would do stuff with Wixen. I've certainly put some Wixen seeds in the ground. There's these sort of crab genetics. I've tried breeding with John Downey, which is a very interesting crab apple. There's another crab apple called Young American, which no one seems to be talking about on the internet. That has a very, very distinct pomegranate flavor to it, and it's an early season crab. So that I've bred with. That certainly with something like Bethan, which was an early season apple, would mean you get a very, very distinct flavored early season apple. You always want to have something with good flavor and crisp, as far as I'm aware. I mean, with the Cox flavor, gosh, you can have Red Windsor, you can have Elstar, Carmine, Kent, Jupiter, Epicure, Freckles, Cheerful Gold. All of these varieties that already have the Cox's Orange Pippin flavor and will give something. I mean, for example, Rajka, it had a bit of Cox's Orange Pippin from the James Grieve on both sides, from the Sampion and the Katie. You'd certainly want a bit of that because that adds depth of flavor. You don't want a very flat, short flavored apple, but you also want it to be juicy. So I can go in, or I probably have the lists of what I bred with around here. So recently, going through what seedlings I've got growing right now. Let's go through some interesting stuff. So Braintree seedling crossed with Rajka. So when it's Braintree seedling crossed Rajka, that means that the Braintree seedling is the what you call the seed parent, and the Rajka is all the pollen. So that's interesting. Certainly Captain Kidd and Rajka. Captain Kidd is Kidd's Orange Red Sport. Very strong pear drops flavor. So again, with Rajka, my feelings would be that would be a sort of an interesting one. You'd certainly want to try Captain Kidd with anything you've got that you want to add more flavor to. It also has that Red Delicious shape to it, so it's a very attractive looking apple. If you want to go early, I've tried Epicure and St Edmunds Pippin. Those are very early varieties. I've even tried Honeycrisp. You know, why not? From what I found with the Primrose Pippin, when you go Route 1, when you go for the most obvious cross being, hang on, this is a commercial success apple which had attributes that people like, let's jazz it up with more flavor, that actually seems to work. You know, it's not some sort of crazy secret sort of experiment where you have to discover some variety that's sort of very obscure and cross that with something else even more obscure to come up with some very unique new apple. Maybe that's possible, but it's also very, very simple. And if you're a hobby breeder, just do the very obvious stuff and you will probably find some sort of success, because no doubt if you like something and you cross it with something else you like, one of your seedlings will just be the cross between the two. You don't know if it's going to be 50-50, 70-30, but you may find that you're going to find some harmonious sort of cross of the two, which is what you want. Obviously, every apple has got two parents, which it may start to sort of show characters from the parent which were not actually presented in the fruit. So this will have some stuff from Golden Delicious which aren't very good, and its progeny will maybe show those characters instead of the ones that you can see in this. So that obviously happens with people, that happens with every type of breeding. So you just have to play that's when you have to play the numbers. Other things I've crossed, obviously Egremont Russet is very good. Nouveau Golden Hills is a very nice variety. Cox's Orange Flanders. So Temptation is an interesting one. I think Temptation is a very superior sort of new Golden Delicious. So I've been crossing with that as well. That's a very late season apple as well, very similar to the Goldrush, but I think it's nicer than Goldrush. It's certainly slightly sweeter and more honeyed. Golden Knob, that's a very interesting weird apple. I think some of those offspring are going to be quite ugly. Freiburg, fantastically sweet apple. With I've got some of those sort of crosses coming up, which I thought were very interesting. William Crump crossed with Freiburg, that would be a very late season apple. On the next page, sorry if this is very boring, you can switch off. Julia with Rajka. Now Julia is probably one of the best early season varieties we've got, apart from maybe Vista Bella. So those are sort of very late July, early August apples. So that's me trying to crack in. So Julia and Vista Bella crossed with Bethan. I'm hoping that will be very good. Falstaff's a nice variety. Margil, Young American Rajka, I've got that on here. So another interesting variety I've not talked about is Norfolk Royal Russet. Norfolk Royal Russet is possibly my favorite apple. It's very hard to say no to that one. I'm crossing that with literally everything: Captain Kidd, Bethan, Primrose Pippin, Hamid's Red Pippin. Everything has a bit of Norfolk Royal Russet pollen on. That will be very interesting. Shenandoah, again, another variety that is mostly forgotten about or not talked about. That is almost the perfect apple for late September time. It's quite clearly something close to a Cox. That apple with everything again, just to maybe get that perfect sort of Cox blend. It might turn out not to be a Cox, I don't know. But that's, Sunrise as well, the variety which was the parent for Bethan. So there was one other, There was one other variety that it's not been released from my seedlings, but it's in the process of being released. So the school next door to the nursery, there's a lovely little Montessori school called St. Helens Montessori School. And the children there who no longer go to that school, back in 2015, they selected some seeds as well, some openly pollinated seeds, and I grafted them along with mine and have been raising, doing all the work for them, apart from, the interesting bit for them, which was stratifying a seed and planting it in a pip and germinating, etc. One of their seedlings is actually very, very good. Didn't have a clue what the parents were, either parent, because I just got some. They didn't quite keep the notes as well as they could have. I think they may have. One of the teachers claims that she knows which every sort of seedling came from, but they've not told me. So it came back that was a Sunrise crossed with a Scrumptious. Now this was strong evidence that you select from all the random seedlings that I'd grown for them. The best tasting one turned out to be quite a Route 1 cross of two early season apples, which produces this late August variety, which is very, very nice. And I just thought at that point, hang on, this is strong evidence again that you select two good quality parents and you will end up with, you have a good chance of ending up with a good quality offspring. I know others have done this in a while, I just wanted to be sure. So Sunrise was the parent for Bethan as well. It's a sort of, you can pick the apple basically throughout August and September. It starts off a bit too starchy, then it sort of sweetens up throughout August, and then by sort of the end of September it suddenly loses its crispness. But it's a very nice apple. So I'm certainly saying the Route 1 options are not a bad idea. They're maybe not the best idea, but they're not going to be a bad idea. And I will be doing lots and lots. I probably did 50 crosses in 2024. About just over 50 of them actually successfully took. It's very important to do way more than you need. And those are all growing right now in the grow room, and I will plant those out in March. And when they're about 2 meters tall in the glass house, in August, I'll chip bud those onto M9, and we're looking at having sort of 50% of them fruiting, hopefully by 2030, let's say. It won't take too long, because the longer you grow them, this is what I learned from East Malling Research Station from Amanda. If you can grow them up to 2 meters, the tip will be more mature, and that, if you use that to chip bud, you will actually end up with fruit much sooner. That's what they do. She can get fruits on the tree within 1 year because she grows them in some unholy conditions where the trees are extremely stressed and leggy, but she's doing that so she can get pollen from them, not to actually have the fruit on the stressed out tree. But if you chip budded that, that would fruit pretty much straight away, which is fascinating because all this time I wasn't quite doing it correctly. Last year's stuff, I certainly did grow them to 2 meters and they were chip budded. So the proof is in the pudding. In a few years, if those can fruit very quickly, I'll head those back in March, and once those are growing, if I can see, those will grow to sort of 5-6 feet in the first 5 feet in the first year. If those look like they're going to, I'll certainly be able to tell from the wood shape, but if those start to fruit the following year, then yeah, you've got it from me that's the way forward. You do have to spend money on a grow light and heated mats, etc., but it's worth it if you can save time. So anyway, I'll wrap it up. That's great. Let me know what you're breeding, because I know there are people out there breeding. It seems like there's lots in America. If there's any guys in England who want to sort of chat or meet up or anything, we can certainly sort of arrange to sort of share thoughts. But I know there's lots in America and we can't really sort of ever meet up, but that's fine. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll do more videos when I can. Hopefully this has actually recorded.